Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Creative Belief. This podcast is a curated collection of conversations with creatives who believe that creativity can change the world. My name is Alex. I get to be one of the co-hosts on the show, and I'm here with my buddy and my business partner, Josh. Josh, how's it going today, man?
Hey, it's going pretty good. Lots happening in our life, just pretty busy, but all in all, doing pretty well, man. Excited for today's guest and kind of get going here.
Yeah, we're super pumped about who we have on the show with us today. So let's get into it. Today, we've got Breana Elliott on the show. Breana is the owner and founder of Elliott Design Co., an interior design firm helping homeowners marry form with function. And I've known Breana for years at this point. She and my wife were roommates while my wife and I were in the dating phase. Breana was the person who would tell my wife, like, hey, you should just marry him. Like, you're going to marry him. You should just make this happen. And my wife was the person who was like, no, I think we're just friends. But I knew we were more than friends. And it worked out, and I won. So, Breana, welcome to
Congrats.
the show.
Thank you so much, Alex. I'm totally honored to be here. And yeah, I'm excited to have this in my day. Just a little bit different look at my day-to-day norm.
Yeah, for sure. We're super pumped about that.
Yeah, Breana, we're excited to have you. I'm excited to meet you and get to know you a little bit. And let's start there. Let's start with your backstory. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Maybe some of the things growing up that kind of sparked creativity early in your life or kind of unlocked that inside of you, and kind of what drew you into creating and where you're at now.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that I have a two-part answer to this question. So I first was exposed to creativity through both of my grandparents. So my grandpa was doing computer graphics, so the early stages of computer graphics. And I would watch him kind of piddle on the computer or even doodle, and he would teach me how to doodle different drawings, like, a palm tree or whatever, something like that. And then also my grandmother. So I spent a lot of time sewing with her. And sewing is one of those things that it's meticulous. It's detailed, it takes a lot of patience, and there are a lot of steps, right, to getting your end result. So I just remember being upstairs with her in this hot room, just like painfully going through the motions of sewing.
Yeah.
So there's that. But I would say I really got into art as a high schooler. So I took a darkroom photography class, and I would say that my teacher, Mr. Daly, he noticed that I had a talent. And this was the first time that I kind of had an adult kind of notice a talent and really encourage me in that. Darkroom photography, again, is another meticulous art form, right? So you have to go capture your film, protect your film. You have to take it to the darkroom, develop your film, and then to even get one print, it's that whole process of developing your print, right? So you really learn to value your art, because there are so many steps along the way where it could be ruined, or you could put so much time in and it's just still not what you were wanting. So just that patience and attention to detail that was necessary to create a really beautiful end result.
Yeah, that's amazing. There's been a theme on the show of high school creative experiences that people have had, whether that's in an art class, whether that's in newspaper, yearbook. Like, there's just this really interesting theme of high school teachers who have spoken in to students and said, hey, like, you've got a talent, you've got gifting, you should try and do something with this. So I think that's really cool that theme just continues. And shout out to high school art teachers for investing in kids and helping them see the potential that they have.
Yeah, Mr. Daly was definitely a really great influence. And yeah, I took many years of classes then, my whole high school career. And yeah, I just really value just the environment that he would create in the room. Also, it was just a very approachable space, relaxing place to be, that I think allowed his students to find, be creative and confident at the same time.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Brianna, talk to us then, college, like where did you take that creativity to from high school? I know you've kind of been in the world of photography as well. So talk to us about kind of that journey beyond high school and what that led you to.
Yeah, so I did go to the Heron School of Art for a semester, and I thought I wanted to study photography. And I wasn't quite sure what kind of photographer I wanted to be, but that's what I thought. Leaving high school, that's what I thought I wanted to do. But I spent a one semester in art school, and I quickly found out that my type A personality was not for art school. So it's interesting. I am a creative, but I'm a type A person. So
Yeah.
I wanted to know how I could get an A. And, in art school, everything is subjective. They're like, oh,
Right.
that's not like intuitive enough. And you get a B minus. I'm like, no, that does not work for me. I need an A, So I decided that, I already had creative talent, and what I really needed was a business degree to marry my creative talent with a business in the future. So I then switched to going to the Kelley School of Business, and I studied marketing and supply chain management. And really, I ran with the marketing. The supply chain management isn't something I ended up really using. But from there, I moved to Lincoln, Nebraska with my husband for his job. I took a job that was at an in-house ad agency for a large company in Lincoln, Nebraska. And then I actually moved back here to Indy with Miller Brooks, which is an advertising agency. And and then I had another job in marketing. So I really enjoyed all of my time in advertising. Again, it's the flexing that another area of creativity for me. I think that creativity is a transferable skill. Yep. And so that was just another area, another bucket for me of creativity. But as we grew our family, it became very, very clear that both of us just couldn't have a full-time career. And so as we had started our first home, I found myself, again, another arm of creativity, just loving making a home and interior design. And I started to have a lot of people asking me, could you help me with my home? And there's something just so vulnerable about that. That I decided to, quit my full-time job and start Elliott Design Co. So it allowed me the flexibility to be with my family, but also still have that creative outlet and extra income, and not totally stifle my creativity just because I became a mom. And then I would say, as far as photography goes, I did photography all through college. I shot weddings. So my first wedding was as actually a senior in high school. It's just a backyard wedding. And all through college, I shot weddings, and that's how I kind of got myself through college. And that was definitely an experience, very physical, but also a very intimate and creative job. So I have, retired my wedding photography days, but it definitely, again, just photography is something that's, because I formed that skill so early, I've been able to just carry it through as a business as well.
Well, yeah, I'm sure even being a business owner and doing interior design, like you've got to be able to tell the story of the spaces that you're creating. And so having that like technical knowledge and that understanding of that form of art, I'm sure has helped kind of carry over, and it's what helps to tell the story of the clients that you get to work with.
I would agree. I would definitely agree.
Yeah. So let's talk about like creative process. And as you're thinking about a space that you're designing, or thinking about creativity in any of the other facets of your life, right? We talked about before we started recording, you are a mom, having kids at home, having really creative experiences for them. Just talk to us a little bit about like your creative process. What are you trying to do when you are creating something new?
If I'm going to speak specifically to interior design, I'm always I'm walking into someone's home, which first of all is a very vulnerable thing. And so the first thing I'm trying to do is just make them feel like I'm an asset, right? Of someone that's here to help and not judge, or, just like, I have no preconceived notions. I'm just here to help solve a problem, a woe that you have in your home. And it's, the space not working. We don't know what color, whatever it is. So usually I try to listen to the pain points of their just like day-to-day living, and then come back with something that would create a little bit of surprise and delight. It's like, well, did you think about a round table here, or this like really dramatic color, or this oversized art piece, or, maybe just not even using this room for this at all, and, introducing a whole different use for a space. So, and then as far as, creativity, it's interesting, before I got on this podcast today, I told my oldest son that I was going to be on for creativity. And I was like, do you think mommy's creative? And he said, yeah. I was like, oh, in what way am I creative? And he said, you're really creative with your consequences.
That's awesome. I love your son. He is just such a sharp little kid. And I think that's amazing.
So if I were to speak to, if one or two examples, so as a parent, I think there's a key to getting ahead of a behavior before I reach my own frustration point. And if I notice a behavior that's starting to, kind of trigger me, my whole thing is that I'm supposed to be there to help. So behavior is showing me that that's all they know how to do, right? They need help learning a different way to do something. So like, for example, last spring break, I was 8 months pregnant with our fourth kid, and we go to the doctor's office for a sick child. And my kids we always set the tone of like what our behavior should be at the doctor's office. But still, they would just run all over the doctor's office, climbing on the chairs. I'm trying to talk to the doctor. They're jumping off the table and like ripping the curtains up. And I just, every time, just would be so stressed. And so the first day of spring break, we woke up and I said, hey guys, guess what? And I said, I noticed that, going to the doctor's office is really hard for us. So we're going to practice. And they were like, what? I'm like, yeah, and guess what? We could practice every day if we needed to. So we got up and we we went to the doctor's office without an appointment, and we sat in the waiting room for 5 minutes. And they figured it out, right? Like, and I said, you know what? If we still struggle today, we have every day off this week. We can go every single day. And so it's things like that, it's just, it's applying, like, how can I like not do the same, like just get totally out of my own comfort zone of like in rhythm and help my kids learn, again, through like creative consequences. So
yeah, creative consequences. That's like the name of your parenting book if you were to write one. That's so awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's great. And I love even backing up a bit. And when you're talking about just how vulnerable it is to walk into somebody's home and space, and almost like the privilege you have to like be a part of that and help kind of shape that. Because I think a lot of our conversations that we've had with people, we find ourselves talking about building trust, right? And vulnerability is like a huge part of that, right? I think for us our homes are such a vulnerable place. To invite people into that is a vulnerable place, but for then you to also approach it in that way with that understanding, not that, hey, I'm just going to come in here and tell you what to do, tell you what to put on your wall, like all this stuff where it becomes more of this collaborative effort, and being able to express that emotion and that sentiment just goes such a long way in building trust with people that we get to do work with. Right. And I think that it just helps us as artists grow and understand people a lot better. And I think also just helps us understand our craft, and not just allowing us to like throw up like what's trendy, or like, let's just do this because I saw it on Pinterest, so it's going to work, because there's just so much more to it than that. And I love that you said that. And I just really wanted to point that out because I think that's just a really important part of creativity in general, and especially when we're working with clients and trying to build trust. and kind of going in that direction too. Yeah. And kind of going in that direction too. What's some of the best creative advice you've received? We've kind of heard a wide scope of things. And so I'd be interested to know what some that you've heard.
The best creative advice. So I have one and I still don't like it, but I still remember it. And it's imitation is the greatest form of flattery. So if I go back actually to that high school class, I had a print that won an award and got put in a show. And then I'm like a senior in high school, and there were these more junior level photographers that were trying to recreate my prints, exactly. And I was, oh man, I was just so upset about it. And I'm like, they're not original and whatever. And he's like, but imitation is the greatest form of flattery. So, if I think about that, if I even get inspiration, from somewhere else, right? I'm like, it is okay, because really it's a form of flattery for me to even be inspired by someone else's work.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much of that, right? Like we have to consume to be inspired. It takes that act of like consuming and viewing someone else's work to inspire. And there's a difference between imitation and copying, right? But like when we see other people's work and that can inspire us, it can unlock something new in us and maybe a new iteration of something that they're working on or have done in the past. And so I agree. It is a struggle sometimes when you see someone that's like, oh, they literally just like did kind of what I did. But if you flip it on its head, it's like, oh, they thought what we did was really great. And so they wanted to leverage that for their brand, their identity, their whatever, whether that's right or not, like it is a form of flattery.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I want to talk about another element of creativity I feel like that I have always appreciated about you and your family is your cooking. This is not in the questions that we sent, but I want to talk about it because Lauren and I, like, we love to cook. We have become a lot more adventurous in our old age when it comes to eating. But I remember having dinner with you guys one night and you fixed us Brussels sprouts. And Lauren and I both were like, we're not the biggest Brussels sprout people, but like, we're going to eat. We're going to be really great guests. And to this day, like, some of the best Brussels sprouts that we eat. And now we eat them like every week because we learned how to do that from you.
Awesome.
So talk about that. Cause I also know you, like I've seen you talk about on social media as a mom, creating creative meals for your kids to help them explore food. So just talk about your creativity when it comes to the kitchen and cooking.
I love this question. So again, I would describe myself as a creative person, and mostly I stay home with my kids and I have my businesses, but motherhood can be so mundane, right? And it to me is a choice of whether or not I choose to lace in creativity into my day so that I just don't feel so creatively stifled. So cooking for me is a necessity in our day, but it's a way for me to feel more creative. And so it's something too, it's creating with your hands. So I think it's very satisfying to actually physically make something with your hands. And then I also think that cooking is one of the most loving creative forms, right? So one of the things that I love to do in my home is not just to make the food, but to plate it for my guests. So just taking the time not to say, hey, the dinner's on the stove, like go get it yourself, but to actually curate a plate and to arrange the food in a really beautiful way and present it to my guest. And to me, that is, or even, my kids and my husband, so like to me, there's just nothing quite as warm as when someone hands you a plate of handmade food that they've just like really beautifully displayed on a plate. So, but yeah, little things like sourdough, to me, I became obsessed with that. And then I was giving out like Oprah and then I just let it die, So, I do kind of latch on to these different ways of being creative. And I definitely think that cooking is a very approachable creative form that is accessible to anyone. But again, with that underlying theme of preparation and discipline and just taking the time to really spend time with your food to make a delicious meal.
Yeah, that's good. And one of the things I love about, I feel like cooking and creativity that I have found with our kids is that it's a great way to to invite them into that process, right? To
Yes.
have them help prepare the meal, to cook. Asher is obsessed with making my latte every morning. Like he wakes
Yes.
up
Yeah.
and he's like, "Hey dad, can I go get the 18 grams?" And I'm like, "Well, what are
Mm-hmm.
you talking about?" Because
18
someone
grams.
could think that
Mm-hmm.
you're not talking about coffee beans, but he loves that process. He has been practicing latte art. And so we'll steam the milk.
Awesome.
I'll help him with that. He's practicing his latte art, like that creativity. And I love the vulnerability of cooking, but it's a way
Mm-hmm.
to really infuse creativity, I feel like, into our kids. And sometimes it's chaos. I want
Of
to say
course.
that. And like,
Yes.
it's not always pretty. And like, we've melted spatulas and almost caught the kitchen on
Mhm.
fire multiple
Yeah.
times. But it is a really, I think, fun way to bring in a new form of
Fun.
creativity for our kids and help them open up their world and try something different because they made it, rather than just me putting it on a plate in front of them and saying, "Hey, you have to eat this broccoli that you say is gross." When they
Uh-huh.
make it, all of a sudden it becomes so much better.
I totally agree. We've had the same experience that, involving kids in the kitchen definitely helps their exploration of foods and just, yeah, for them to be more excited about what they're eating.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
because at the
awesome.
end of the day, right, creativity is just solving problems, and I think that like you're
Mm-hmm.
able to recognize a lot of those ways, especially with your kids. And we have kids as well, and they're just super picky. I think most parents probably deal with that, but the more that we've been able to like give them maybe autonomy over their food decisions or
Mm-hmm.
things like that, that a little more buy-in, they start to, for whatever reason, all of a sudden now they
Mm-hmm.
like that food that they've hated for so long. But when they've, and so it's so important, I think, to understand like creativity is this avenue that we're seeing problems and we're just trying to solve them, right? And whatever that is, whether it's those like you were saying, like acting out the scenario for your kids in the doctor's office. Like we've
Mm-hmm.
totally been there as well, and trying
Mm-hmm.
to act through those things. And I think that's important for all of us to really recognize, is like we're all creative, like because
Mm-hmm.
we can all identify these problems and we may address them or solve them differently, but that's kind of the part of the creative process as well, right?
Mm-hmm. It can be kind of married in the mundane, right, of life, if you allow it to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that you can kind of bring that into your world as well. Like I love
Mm-hmm.
when you said, motherhood at times just felt real mundane. But as a creative person, like I realized I needed to some outlets.
Mm-hmm.
And so in some ways it's like it's almost this like selfish thing. And I don't say that in a
Mm-hmm.
negative sense.
No,
It's like
yeah.
we kind of have to fuel and feed ourselves in those ways. But also
Mm-hmm.
on the other end of it, you're still being such a gift to others by what you're doing as well, right? Like the plating food
Mm-hmm.
or allowing your kids to cook and all those aspects. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
it also just goes to show of like I need this for myself, which
Mm-hmm.
is a good thing and an okay thing.
Mm-hmm.
And others reap the benefits of that too, because when I fill myself with this, I'm able to then give in a better way to those that are around me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Party planning, I would say. I love to plan kids' parties. Like, just, I mean, if you give me a theme like Pokemon, like I am just, I get a little out of control. So,
I would say
party planning.
I've been to Brianna's kids' parties and they are like top tier. So I love it.
Yeah. I'm like, if my creativity's been stifled too long and there's a kid's birthday party coming up, it's going to be a little out
So
of
wild.
control. Yeah.
I love it. Brianna, I want to talk a little bit about the business ownership side of owning Elliott Design Co., being a
Mhm.
business owner, and the balance of running a business, right? Running a successful business, and also being the
Mhm.
person creating inside of that
Mhm.
business. There's the operation side, there's the execution side. How do you manage all of that? How do you find space and time to do
Mhm.
those things and not feel like you just get drowned by the things that you have to do for a business, and you still
Mhm.
have time to like really create and bring these really unique solutions to your clients' homes?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So first of all, I would say I'm blessed that I do not have pressure to, have a certain amount of client load. I have the flexibility to take on as much work as our life allows, right? So right now, like, we had a baby a year ago. It's like, it's been a little quieter. I've taken on less, but once all my kids are in school, it's like, I'll have a lot more time.
Yeah.
So there's that, but also I would say that with every client that I take on, there is that discovery call, and we have a very just forward conversation, and I tell them that I move at a glacial pace. So I say, I'm a one woman show. I probably can't get this to you for whatever. So it's boundary and expectation setting, I think, is really,
Yeah.
really important. Communicating, be very, very clear communicator. As far as the business side and, pricing and all of that goes, I am very transparent. So I just kind of overview how everything works, so there's no questions or ambiguity. And then, then we kind of get working on the creative side. So as far as just finding time for creativity, I was thinking about this last night, actually, as I prepared for this podcast. And that's a really interesting topic. Even if I think back to my advertising days, it can be exhausting as a creative. You have a deadline, right? And that you are just trying to get after and meet, but then the creativity is just not flowing because you're pressuring yourself to stuff all this work in, and that you're not producing your best. And yep. I again, going back to the transparency piece and the glacial pace piece, I will go back to my clients sometimes and say, hey, I know we're supposed to meet on Thursday, but I feel kind of stuck, on this one area, and I don't feel really confident in my solution yet. So let's meet next week. And I just kind of tell them, and 100% of the time they're always, great, that's no problem. And they're very understanding. And I think they're appreciative of that forthright conversation about how, maybe something isn't quite ironed out. And I'm just not willing to present something that I'm not happy with yet.
Yeah, man, that's so good. And I feel like there's, as creatives, we sometimes put way too much pressure on ourselves to be like, I said this deadline, I have to deliver at this time. Mm-hmm. And when you, in an appropriate amount of time, say, right. Hey, like I need a little bit more. Because I want to deliver the best possible solution for you. If it's because that you're constantly procrastinating and you're not organized, like that's a whole other thing you got to figure out.
Right. Exactly.
But if it's genuinely that creative block, which happens to all of us, then to have those conversations. And I think, again, back to this idea of building trust, it creates trust, because I think I have discovered in working with clients that kind of thing happens in their life too. And so I was always afraid of them thinking like, oh, we're not this buttoned up studio. We don't have it all together. And anytime I've done that with a client, they're like, yeah, I get it. That happened to me last week and I had to push something or change a meeting or whatever. It's something that they can resonate with. And I think often find refreshing that we're honest about that rather than just presenting something and acting like we love it. To then, potentially later find out like that wasn't our best work, or we didn't love it. We were just rushing through because we had set a deadline.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I feel so much responsibility going into someone's home, right? And I don't want to recommend them spending money on buying anything, if I don't think it's the right fit. So I do have pressure in that way too, of just a responsibility of not just going in, throwing something together and being like, just buy this, when it's not really what I would want for my own home, of having that standard of, is this what I would want for myself? No, so it just needs a little bit more time.
Yeah, that's really great. I think I was just talking to a friend the other day about creative block. He had texted me about that. And I think like, until you've experienced it, like you think it's this like non-existent, like
you think it's an excuse
out there. Yeah. Like it's just some sort of an excuse. And understandably, like, especially people that aren't necessarily in traditional forms of creativity or, that are artists like that are clients of ours, right? Like when we say, hey, like I'm really blocked, just like clouded. I can't get to where I feel like I need to go. it would almost be super acceptable of them to be like, I'm moving on, or, like, I'm just going to decide what we're going to do. And like, I would understand those things, but there's almost this like level of compromise within all of us as creatives and as artists, that you're like, I can give you what might be okay and look okay, but I don't know that that's what we want to do here. Right. And just being, again, and it goes back to when you've built trust with your client in those vulnerable moments, or you've set, though you've had those tough conversations or those initial conversations at the beginning, there's just a better understanding all around for all of us. So when those moments come up, you're right. Like it's way better to have those decisions later, with the understanding of what we've talked about ahead of time, when we say, hey, I'm just not feeling it. And there's just a way better understanding on both ends of what that process is like moving forward. But I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think that's a real thing. I think sometimes even myself and as artists, like, we struggle maybe admitting it, or just even being willing to be vulnerable enough to talk about that with other creatives as well. But I think if we're all, but it's like one of those things too, like if we're all honest, like we all experience it probably a lot. Right. And so I think like, it's just really important to kind of get that out there. But one thing that we've been asking everybody to, and it's been really interesting to hear kind of what people have been saying, and but we kind of want to shift this one even more into your world of interior design. But it's, where do you see creativity heading in the next 5 years? So I'm not like, I'm super excited to hear what you have to say. Like I'm not really in tune with like the world of interior design. Like I love it. I love seeing great design. But I'm interested to see and hear what you have to say about that.
Well, my answer might disappoint you. I don't know that I have a vision for that. I would say I almost keep my world small. Like, I do have resources where I'm like learning and growing and looking for that vision of the future. I would like to answer that question more in terms of creativity in general. And what I'm hoping is that there does seem to be a tension right now when it comes to technology, right? So technology being just like consumption of, social media, or, always on the TV, all these electronics in our faces, right? And I would say that those things stifle our time to be creative, right? But it feels like there is starting to be a tension of people realizing that, what the effect that is having on their lives. So what I'm hoping we'll see is just people going back to, I'm seeing a lot more of people, again, making their own foods from scratch, or, getting out and doing more of their own gardening and growing their own foods, right? So, and I think creativity is one of the things that God's given us as an antidote to stress, right? So what I am hoping to see is everyone just kind of finding their modicum of creativity in their day-to-day life. So again, gardening, putting a planter together on your front porch, sewing something for your kid, just doing a little like doodle, I don't know. So, but just finding ways to be creative as an antidote to stress and getting away from technology and kind of pushing in. I'm hoping to see a shift basically of more creative art forms in day-to-day life.
I love that.
Yeah.
I would say that's so good. We're like in that boat of having 2 kids. Like, how do we not have the screen time? How do we have ways for them to experience life that doesn't have to be centered around technology? And so this summer we're planting a new garden. We're doing raised beds in the side of our house, right? Like our daughter is already picking out all the flowers that she wants to plant this year, getting them excited. And again, it's about that involvement of how do we create creative moments throughout our everyday life. And it's really not as hard as I think people maybe sometimes assume that it is. It's little tiny tweaks here and there in our day of how we could solve a problem that we maybe traditionally would have just gone to the grocery store and bought the Brussels
Great.
sprouts. Let's try to grow them and let's see
Yeah.
what happens. And maybe they're going to be disgusting, but like they could be amazing. And we tried it, and it was an amazing experience for our family that we can now talk about. It's those little shifts to add creative moments throughout your day. I love that vision, and I would agree. I hope that is where our society and our culture heads.
Yeah. So sorry, I didn't have an interior design vision, but
that's
my
great.
answer. Yeah.
I think that all fits into it though, right? I think that's the same principle. It's how do we create spaces that aren't centered around technology? How do we create these moments where we can gather around a beautiful table, a meal, around, really comfortable seating, whatever it is that's about connection with other people rather than with technology and screens.
Yeah. And don't feel bad or sorry like at all. Like I think that I love that answer because it goes back to us at the core of creatives, right? Of like the things that I do on a computer are out of like things that I value or things that inspire me, things that fill me, right? And so like this broad word of creativity is like so broad that like it just means different things to different people, right? And there's different mediums for different people. But I think out of that, like if you were to give me the opportunity to design a room or whatever, it's like I'm going to probably approach it just from the things that inspire me or the things that I've seen that I like, and so what you're saying I think just takes you back and takes us back to kind of the heart of who we are as society as humans, like kind of this like raw organic kind of style that honestly like I think is a huge part of where we are going. Like it seems like there's like going to be so many paths moving forward into AI and technology and like that's just going to be rapidly growing and increasing and getting better and better. But I think there is going to be this other side that is like very raw and very grassroots or very handcrafted, handmade things at the same time that like both I think exist. Right. And like, it's just kind of a matter of like, maybe we'll overlap and we'll do, different things at different times. But out of that, like wherever we're at, it's like, we're still probably approaching those things out of who we are as individuals, who we are as artists and creatives.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Breana, as we kind of wrap up our conversation today, we would just love to know, like, is there anything on the horizon for you personally, professionally, anything that you're super excited about, maybe a project or something that you guys are working on that you're excited about?
So I don't know that I have a specific project that I'm excited about. In general, this past year has been just marrying a lot of friendships with my business. So I have a lot of friends that have been moving, and I've just been honored to be part of their move or their new home. And so that is a really cool aspect of my business is that a lot of my clients end up being friends or they're already friends, and I get just kind of get to walk alongside them. But as far as myself, so for this year, I do have 2 new things I want to try. One being throwing pottery. That's something I've never done.
Okay.
And it's just like a new creative form that I'm interested in, but I've just never done. So that's on my, it's a goal I have for this year. And then the other is to take an adult dance class. So I like to dance. I like to dance, but I was a cheerleader in high school. I didn't do dance, but I will probably go somewhere where no one I know will be. But I have a desire to take like a hip hop class or something. I don't know. So those
awesome.
are just more creative arms, so pottery and dance.
I love it. That's
awesome.
so cool. That sounds so fun. I really think you need to get Derek to go with you to the dance class. That would be my number one recommendation.
I've tried to tell him I want to take dance classes, and when our kids are older, like that is in his future, and he's just like, okay. So,
Oh, that's
He's like,
awesome.
maybe you'll forget when your kids are older.
yeah,
And
Right.
it's been 12 years, and about every 2 years, I remind him, and he's
I
just
was
like,
like,
okay,
I was
still
like,
haven't
Breana doesn't forget.
forgotten.
Breana's
No,
not going to forget that one. So.
no.
Well, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for saying yes, for taking time out of your day to chat with us. I've been super inspired, and I think people are really going to have enjoyed this episode and the conversation and just the simple act of putting small creative moments throughout their day.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a privilege, and you guys totally brightened my day of putting just something different and unique into a random Thursday.
Oh, that's awesome.
thank
We've
you for
loved having
joining us.
you. Yeah, thanks for joining us. We want to thank all of you for joining us on another episode of Creative Belief. We hope this podcast has reminded you that you were made to create incredible things. So go and create something special today that makes the world a better place. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. You can also follow what we're doing at our Creative Design Studio on Instagram. That's at Creator Studio, at CRTR Studio. We'll link to Breana's company, Elliott Design Co., all that stuff in the show notes. So make sure if you're working on an interior design project, if you need someone to help you with that, she is the person to go to. So reach out and get connected with her, and we will see you on the next episode.